IVM.
रियल एस्टेट फॉर अ लॉन्ग टाइम टिल रिसेंटली वाज लाइक ऑटोमोबाइल सेक्टर जो आपको प्रीमियर पद्मिनी या एम्बेसडर ही बेचता था.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
And today it has kind of moved on the completely other end where there are categorizations. Like we are also associated with some real estate awards. I sit in the jury, and there this year for the first time we felt the need to diversify real estate housing into even more sectors. Like mass housing naam ka sector tha hi nahi. Suddenly
Correct.
we find mass housing as a sector. And uber luxury has also come in. Earlier, luxury for most of us used to be in South Mumbai, very costly, very hugely expensive land. You construct a building and call it luxury. What do you fit in over there was nobody ever asked for.
Correct.
But today, and of course, those are the days when in the name of luxury, they would bring in a few brands. I don't want to talk much about it. Say a Trump brand has come in.
Sure.
So you're cuffing up a 10-20% extra for a brand which may not even remain forever. So the whole concept of real estate, not just as a product but as a service as well, has kicked in. So today when you're talking uber luxury and luxury segment, people are saying that it is not good enough for you to sell me an apartment. You have to ensure that for next 25 years, my house remains the way it is or even better.
Exactly. Folks, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter, and I'm thrilled to welcome back Knight Frank on Paisa Vaisa. We spoke with them last year, and it was always good. It's always good to have a real estate expert with us. My guest today, Gulam Zia, Senior Executive Director, Knight Frank India. We'll be talking about the state of real estate. So as I said in the intro, folks, we have Gulam Zia from Knight Frank with us, and last year we had Vivek Rathi. This year, like I said, I'm thrilled to welcome a veteran and expert to our show. Gulam, thank you so much for doing this. Welcome to Paisa Vaisa.
Thank you so much for calling me here, and thanks a lot for reminding that I'm a veteran, that I'm old enough perhaps in this room. So thanks for telling me where I belong.
Yeah, between the two of us, we've got enough experience, so don't worry, you're not the only guy in the room. But since you mentioned that you've got experience, tell us the experience. I know it for sure. Some of our listeners might not.
Well, honestly, I don't know anything beyond real estate, and as a 32 years of life spent in trying to understand the mysteries of real estate, of which 23 odd years in the current dispensation in Knight Frank. Prior to that with a well-known developer called Tata Housing, about 8 years over there. And before that, if it counts, another developer called Kalpataru. So that's about 31, 32 odd years of work ex.
Wow. So let's start from the lessons from COVID. It happened in March 2020, and the real estate was among the sectors that were shaken up, perhaps in both good and bad way. And here we are now, 3 years after that. Hopefully COVID is behind us. What were the lessons? And if you can just help us out in residential and commercial separately.
It was extremely a dark phase. Prior to COVID itself, residential was going through a very, very serious recessionary kind of a period, especially housing. There were no takers. The upper end of the housing, which was luxury, markets, etc., was in a very bad shape. The affordable housing was doing well because of a lot of interventions from government agencies, policies and structural cleansings and so on. A lot of things were in place. So that sector was doing well. But unfortunately, you should know that if you talk about the developers who you and I know about, are barely into affordable housing. They all are only in the mid to upper end of the market. So that segment, which is really big one, where the government interventions, etc., also helped, was in any case not helping the developer fraternity that much. And then came COVID. So it was kind of, last nail in the coffin. Because India, at least the way I look at it, even the second and third wave, we didn't really close down that bad. So even if something else, hopefully it doesn't. But then we have learnt our lessons and we are outside of it. I'm sure we're not looking at any more shutdowns or close downs, etc. But on the other side, something very, very intriguing and very, very shocking to say happened was a sudden, lease of life to residential real estate, which, as I said earlier, was in a very bad phase. And suddenly everybody started buying houses. Of course, there were a few interventions from various governments, like in Maharashtra, they had some stamp duty cuts, etc. So while it was not that big an amount, but then it really came in as something to entice those who were sitting on the fringe, who were neither the buyers or not nor buyers. They were the ones who jumped in. And then it all changed. Many other states followed, West Bengal followed, Karnataka did so, and so on. And then what started as just way of infusing some life into real estate, wow, how it bounced back. And especially residential, as we speak, fabulously placed. And then going back to the question that you specifically asked, what are the lessons learned? Unfortunately, 3 decades of my existence in this industry, at least I have learned that the developers don't learn any lessons.
Okay, that's one way to put it. Yeah.
So if I have to say that what are the most important things? Well, one thing which most of them have been talking about, that post-COVID, people want bigger houses because, work from home and blah, blah, blue, blue, study from home, etc., etc. So bigger houses is the new norm. Well, I don't buy into that, because just for a few lessons learned out of a certain pandemic, which may not happen for another century, for me to extend myself and buy another bedroom of worth 1 crore, typically in Mumbai, every bedroom costs 1 crore minimum. So spending 1 crore more just because I wanted work from home, well, I'm not too convinced.
Very interesting. It was the first time that I've heard, someone actually questioned this, because this theory had gained major acceptance with a lot of people. Now people want bigger homes. This cost angle, of course, is right.
I get that. I get that. The whole logic, lesson learned, as I said, the reason why I believe that many of us in the industry don't learn our lessons is exactly that. Earlier, I can talk about, say about 10 years back when the industry was going through a similar bad patch. A few new things came up, like senior citizen living, like student housing. So we keep coming up with something new. The industry is that way pretty genius and pretty creative. They keep telling you new stories. So earlier, there were those reasons to believe that, chalo, warehousing karte hain, chalo, data centers karte hain. But the moment times are good with residential, you will not see the same developers going back and talking about the same sectors which they were doing earlier. That's the reason for me to say that the lessons are never learnt.
Okay.
What sells is the biggest lesson. Sure. So today, what is selling today, at least today, is luxury is selling. So that's a good learning. So how long will it sell? Anybody's guess. But that said, something which was about larger homes, etc., for the moment it is selling. How long? I don't know. So in terms of learning, another few things have really happened is about consciousness, about healthy living. So there are more gardens, there is more focus on health clubs and so on and so forth, because even the buyers are asking for it. So well, whatever said and done, ultimately what consumer is asking, the developers are quick to learn and deliver. That is something which is happening. So a few of these changes have come about. But except for that, if you're asking me what else has changed, not much, at least in residential. Sure. Now, office is a different sector altogether. Yeah. Let's understand, prior to COVID, office was doing fabulously well. Office sector, prior to COVID, was a saving grace for the sector. But during COVID, it was worst hit. Of course, there were other 2 sectors like retail and hospitality. Both those sectors have bounced back, but office is still taking a little longer. While it has not been as badly hit as it was during COVID, because work from homes, etc., many of those things are now gone. All of us, now that I'm sitting with you and recording in a studio, even that was not to be till recently.
Vivek was online with us. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's one lesson that, the COVID things are behind us. So most of us are back in our offices and workspaces. And that's something which is yet to show full result on office sector. Largely because the global environment is also not very conducive. So whether you talk about the energy crisis or you talk about the Russia-Ukraine war or many of the Americans and European countries going through still a prolonged kind of a recessionary or sub-recessionary kind of a trend, a lot of those reasons. And then as far as office sector is concerned, huge size of the occupiers are MNCs. So if their global spend itself is curtailed, for them to come and spend in India is going to be suspect.
Obviously.
And that's what is yet reflecting. Like to throw in some numbers, prior to COVID, we had almost about 60 million square feet of an office absorption in 1 year, 1 calendar year. Post that, it came down to below 50, 44, 43 kinds.
Wow.
Now it has already crossed 50. So we are inching closer to the previous peak, but in spite of that, it is still not very, very comfortable. And in office sector, the lessons learned are pretty prominent. And especially from wellness perspective, because they are very careful about the people who are coming to work in their offices. So a lot of new policies, etc., created for well-being of the occupiers, etc. So there, the lessons learned are still, I'm sure, those lessons will live for life now. So that's a new way of living life, especially in offices. I am not yet talking about social distancing per se, but that apart, enough of light, good air to breathe, air conditioners are well taken care of, fresh air, oxygen supplies, a lot of those things are now discussed. And even at a macro perspective, the wellness and ESG is kicking in, where people are also discussing how far workers staying away from their work of offices, and that those distances are also now discussed for the first time. Like, of course, earlier it used to be only a few of those rare organizations used to think about it, but today that is discussed because carbon ratings are coming in. So people who are coming from long distances, there is a question: how do you shift the office closer to majority of them to ensure that we reduce the carbon ratings, etc. So a lot of those discussions are happening, and they are here to stay. So unlike a residential, the lessons learned in office will have a deeper mark and will live much longer than what we have learned in residential.
Yeah, thanks for that detailed answer, because they are quite, residential addition of amenities, gardens, etc. That's there. And in office, like you said, that probably that effect is still playing out and will play out, whether it is in terms of higher costs from compliances, ESG, carbon ratings. So that's the past, Gulam. I want to understand what's Knight Frank's view this year onwards, in the sense that this is supposedly the year of normalization, right? I think a few months ago you had a DLF project up north which sold out like $1 billion inventory overnight or something. I don't know what's happening. Okay, what's your view going forward from here for the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, I guess I used a word in my earlier submission. I said this, you use a word, and I want to take an exception of that. I won't call it normalization. I'm saying bouncing back. And like how? That's exactly what I said earlier. That residential sector, which was almost moribund, it was almost dying, has bounced back like anybody's business. And you spoke about one such example. There are many more.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of these developers are in an enviable position. And your question now is, what is it today and how will it be? How will it pan out? Well, here comes another intriguing story, which is about India, which is about how India is performing today. Almost like about 7, 8 years, 10 years back, we used to say that the whole world is connected. Suddenly the discussion is India is completely detached. Because the economy is unaffected by what's happening in the Europe or the war in Russia or American problems of financial environment, etc. All of that, in spite of that, India is growing. And fabulously. Like even the non-believers, the naysayers cannot say that the growth is not visible.
Yeah.
And that is something which is giving me this conviction to, once again, throw a few numbers. Recently, we did a particular report and launched it on an auspicious occasion of industry body's 25 years completion. And then we tried to look into next 25 years. The current market size of real estate is about $500 billion US.
India.
In India.
Domestic.
We're talking India.
Yeah.
India is the discussion.
And this is resi plus commercial or total?
Overall real estate.
Total.
All sectors put together. And that is out of, say, 3.5 trillion we are today.
Yeah.
And not getting into purchasing properties and this is that. I'm not an economist.
Yeah.
Keeping it simple for most of us to understand. the growth that we are looking at today, and not getting into top 4, top 5 countries, this, that, etc. The growth numbers itself, for next 25 years, the worst expectations are also upwards of 30 trillion. So the 100th year of Indian independence, the most skeptics are saying it will cross 30 trillion economy.
Sure.
Of course, a 30 to 40, if you take the midpoint, 35 trillion.
Yeah.
And in that 35 trillion, real estate is expected, we have done our math and looking at the macro modelings, etc., will be at least 15 trillion.
From half a trill.
From half a trillion.
Wow.
Which means, what size of the economy we have today, look at where we are going to land up.
Yeah.
So that is something which is now giving me the courage of conviction to say that is only the beginning.
Sure.
So your question was, where are we landing up soon? Well, I want to believe that this is just the start and the story is yet to unfold in a big way. So if today you spoke about one developer selling some kind of an inventory, I would say this will be a common occurrence. It will continue. Perspective. Last 10 odd years, there has been good growth in Indian economy overall. And let me just not say 10 years, I'm saying even more than that, to be politically correct. I'm not saying only last 10 years, I'm saying even before that. So the growth was pretty visible. So the stock exchanges were doing very well. Overall job creation, like if I said before COVID, there was 60 million office space absorption, which meant a huge number of jobs created and people finding jobs in various offices all over the country. So all that was happening. There were jobs everywhere, wealth creation was happening, everything was happening. The only thing that was not happening was sale and purchase of houses. Right?
Okay.
So that was about 7-8 odd years where many of us were holding back on their key decision of buying a house. For whatever reason. And that was also the period where, the home loan interest rates were also not too very favorable.
Correct.
But immediately after COVID, two things happened. On one side, as I said, various governments gave you the discounts as a motivation for you to come and buy houses on stamp duty cuts. On the other side, the home loan interest rate shrunk. It was lowest in history. If I go back a year, we were touching at actually 6.25% home loan interest rate, unheard of in the country. I recall previously when I bought my first apartment, it was closing in on about 6.5%.
Correct.
This is the lowest that history had recorded. So on one side, you created wealth, and that wealth was put in stock exchanges, and stock exchanges were giving you, even if I would put it in SIPs, etc., were giving you at least 14 to 15. Worst choice of your SIPs would also give you 15% return. So in that period, you earned your money, you made your wealth, you invested it somewhere or the other.
Sure.
And that was showing you enough of a growth. So suddenly, when you had one or two of those, decisions by the governments or whatever, to pull you into the buying mode, here you had enough of your savings.
Correct.
So suddenly, all those guys who came forward and bought were always there. They had money, they had their wealth, stashed up somewhere. It all started coming out. So explaining that to me is pretty simple, that people had the money, the willingness was the question. Now that has completely turned around. Everybody is willing to buy a house. And that, for today, is giving you the reason why whatever happened with one or two of those developers selling their stocks like hotcakes. Now going forward, it shall continue because it's not just the past, but the future is also even more brighter.
Sure. I want to talk about residential real estate now, right? Because it's become like, different prices, different segments. Then there are small cities, big cities, and there's metro, mass, premium. There's a whole lot of variety out there today in real estate. Just look at a city like Bombay. You've got different types of products at different price points. It almost reminds me of an FMCG kind of situation where you've got everything, from sachets to the entire bottle. So what are your thoughts on this? Is it a good thing, bad thing, anything?
Your statement is making me think in a very, very different way, different perspective, and the similarities that you're drawing makes me say that real estate for a long time till recently was like automobile sector, जो आपको प्रीमियर पद्मिनी या एम्बेसडर ही बेचता था.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
And today it has kind of moved on the completely other end, where there are categorizations. Like we are also associated with some real estate awards. I sit in the jury, and there this year for the first time we felt the need to diversify real estate housing into even more sectors. Like mass housing naam ka sector tha hi nahi. Suddenly
Correct.
we find mass housing as a sector. And uber luxury has also come in. Earlier, luxury for most of us used to be in South Mumbai, very costly, very hugely expensive land. You construct a building and call it luxury. What do you fit in over there was nobody ever asked for.
Correct.
But today, and of course, those are the days when, in the name of luxury, they would bring in a few brands. I don't want to talk much about it. Say a Trump brand has come in.
Sure.
So you're cuffing up a 10-20% extra for a brand which may not even remain forever. So the whole concept of real estate, not just as a product but as a service as well, has kicked in. So today, when you're talking uber luxury and luxury segment, people are saying that it is not good enough for you to sell me an apartment. You have to ensure that for next 25 years, my house remains the way it is or even better.
Exactly.
And that is a lesson, once again, you spoke about lessons learned. Developers have learned that lesson, that today it's not just a product, it's a service as well. Yeah. And how do you provide service after service is the key. And that's where, now coming about the product, talking about the product, categorizations, there are immense, huge number of categories. And that too, another lesson I recall, good old days, and the real estate pundits those days used to say, real estate is all about location, location, location.
Exactly.
It's not so anymore.
Yeah.
In every location, you have super luxury, upper end, mid end coming up because it's all about consumers today. Yeah. And consumer preference. There were the days when consumer used to die to, give an arm or a leg to get closer to South Mumbai, purely because conveyance or transportation was a pain.
CBD was there, so.
Exactly. Today, to both things, CBDs have gone all over the country, all over the state. On the other side, transportation is increasing. Yeah. You have coastal roads, you have metros, you have Mumbai is going through a sea change. Yeah. The Mumbai of 5 years from hence will be a different city altogether.
Absolutely.
And that is what is giving rise to this concept that every location is complete in itself. So, real estate is, as I said, kind of a reborn, discovering itself, and good times ahead.
Nice. Gulam, I want to just go deeper into residential real estate given what you said before we went on the break, right? I mean, 20, 30 years ago, it used to be just, okay, this is a product, buy it because the location is there and that's it. You don't have a choice. Today, that decision is not so black and white anymore. Now, the builder has come in, reputation has come in, facilities have come in, all of that has come in. Why has this become so important? I mean, we discussed a lot of the reasons, of course, but for a common man to buy a house today, he has a massive checklist. It was not like this 30 years ago. It was like you just sign the agreement, finish it, khatam.
It's all about educating the buyers. It's all about knowledge and data availability. Till say about 10 years back, what used to happen is the real estate of the country was completely chalk and cheese, north and south. Let me try to explain. You go to south, say a Bengaluru. In Bengaluru, the quality of construction was outstanding. You go to Noida. Should I say more?
Okay, fill in the blanks.
So the point is, this north and south divide very clearly is about education. Is about buyers who are fully understanding what their rights are, who they are, etc. Why so? About 3 decades back, when I was entering in the industry, that was a time when the first time a government of Karnataka tied up with S&S from Singapore and roped in Tata. So it was a 3-way. They did the first IT park in the country.
Wow.
And that paved the way for a complete turnaround. So the same Bengaluru, till then, had no concept of offices except for some business folks or professionals, suddenly had this. And do you know, today, pan-India, we have about 850 odd million square feet of office space, of which at least 250 is in Bengaluru.
Wow, that
Can you imagine in 25 years from where to where? And all of that is a fresh stock.
Yeah.
And that has, given rise to lots of jobs which were essentially in IT, ITS, etc. And those who were working there needed houses to stay.
Correct.
And they were the ones who were educated, who were working in information technology sector. They knew their rights. Bangalore, home loan penetration was the highest because they all were first eligible and be aspiring.
Yeah.
When a youngster, say about 25, 23 years of age, entered the IT space in Bangalore, wanted to buy a house. And that is where he started taking home loans. So the formalization of real estate started from south. And mind you, the developers were sharp enough to understand the turning tides. So even the residential apartments that they were creating in Bangalore were the best. So today when you talk even the best of the names in Mumbai, you will see leakages, you will see tiles not laid properly in spite of spending 3-4 crore.
Absolutely.
Because the buyers are still not as sharp as the Bangalore buyers.
Okay.
Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, because the IT industry not just created jobs but cleans the whole of real estate industry. So hence, when I once again go back to my statement, the quality of construction was the best down south and started gradually going up north. As the buyers are getting educated, buyers are aware about their rights, etc., the awareness is also compelling the developers to do the needful. So imagine in Mumbai where you're spending, crores to buy an apartment, cost of construction in Mumbai today is anywhere about 3,000 to 4,000 rupees a square feet.
Correct.
It can go to 10,000 also the moment you look at the luxury. Even in a 10,000 rupees a square feet apartment, you will find these flaws. But then that 2,000 rupees square feet construction done in Bangalore, at least majority, I don't know to completely generalize, but
Sure.
Bangalore gives you far better quality because quality is not about price. Quality is not about cost. Quality is about your mindset, which is what is changing today.
Very interesting.
So the buyers today are different. And on the other side, the regulator has kicked in. Because governments are also pretty frustrated with the problems that the buyers are facing.
Yeah.
I once again don't want to talk about the problems that the northern buyers are still talking about or facing or not getting their houses after 5-10 years of wait. All that is still happening, but RERA is also making a huge impact. And that is also making lots of data availability. Like you can go to RERA website and check the data, check what your developer that you're intending to buy has done or not done. So the checkboxes you're talking about, those checkboxes, the concept of checkboxes didn't exist 10 years back.
Exactly.
It has changed drastically.
Sure.
So awareness and knowledge and overall aspirations of the buyers is the key reason for the turnaround that you're talking about. So today every buyer wants to ensure that every rupee that he or she is paying is getting the return off.
Okay. I want to ask a very obvious question which will come from so many conversations. I'm sure you've had them. I know that I have had them. Why does expensive residential real estate just always stay expensive? What do I have to do? Do I have to keep on shifting further away from the CBDs, from my offices, just so I can afford my own house? I mean, is this not anything that's new, Gulam? You know that it's probably true in the 80s. It was true 20 years ago. It's true today also. Why is expensive real estate always expensive?
May I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
Have you always been a Bombayite?
I have actually.
Mumbaiite? Let me be correct.
I have.
So your question is valid.
Okay.
Let me explain what is the logic behind it. You pay maximum for the value of land. Now that you're Mumbaiite, you can relate to it better.
Yeah.
The value of land today, if you go to South Mumbai, say in Worli, you're buying an apartment for 100,000 rupees a square feet, out of which the cost of construction could be 10,000 rupees. Sure. Say cost of funding 5,000 rupees, 15,000 rupees. Developer ka profit pakad lo, another 10,000 rupees, 25,000. What is the rest of it? Rest is the value of land. Now, value of land has gone up, spiraling up without any control. It has remained unchecked. The value of land, now go back to Ahmedabad and Hyderabad, has remained under check.
Sure.
The reason is simple. About 10 years back, and as I said a short while back, the aspirations have changed today. 10 years back, you had to, if you were growing up the corporate ladder, and if you are a western side of a Mumbaiite, you will relate to what I'm saying. My father would have an apartment in Borivali, so I grew up in Borivali, IC Colony or whatever. Then I land my first job somewhere close to Malad or some such place, so I find my first rented apartment over there. I earn a bit more, then I go up to say Andheri, and then I start rising up the corporate ladder. I aspire to get closer to Juhu or Bandra. I earn more, I get into Worli. So the whole life
South.
was a game only to buy a better house closer to South.
Yeah.
And then you would retire. And it's simply majority. I'm saying all of them, barring a few exception, who could actually rise up to Borivali, to Lower Parel or Worli. The rest of them struggled to be wherever they were.
Sure.
Why was this happening? Because there was a mad rush. Everybody wanted to go over to South Mumbai. Now that is changing. So here, the earlier reason of why the valuation of land shot up was only that. Pure economics. Today, when we are making metros, etc., first, there's also a concept called development charges. And those development charges are levied. Today, FSI is not coming free to you.
Yeah.
Today, the developer can't even imagine that he had a 100 square meter plot on which he could do 500 square meter property because it's a 1:5 FSI of 5. He has to pay for all that FSI. But this change has happened now in recent past. So today, when you are creating infrastructure, going back to an Ahmedabad or Hyderabad, where the infrastructure was created well in time, and the governments then collected monies that, hey, I have given you a metro today. So that same plot, which till yesterday had no connect, now that metro has come up, the value is going up, so you have to pay share of a part of that you have to share with me.
Sure.
Because that's exactly how the overall development has to happen.
Yeah.
Not developer or people around them can't make all the money. Money has to come back to the system to be spent on more of infrastructure. So that is happening today. So going back to the root of your concern, why the valuations have shot up? Valuations have shot up only for this.
Okay.
Now comes the next question. Will they ever come down? It's very difficult to say. But access to housing, affordable housing, is improving everywhere, including in Mumbai. With metro going up to Mira Road or Thana or Bhivandi, even Bhivandi metro is under construction, getting ready, or Panvel and so on. So public mode of transport is improving. So today when you are creating metros, etc., at least you are giving a respectable way, life to people. And then asking them for a better price for that house that he is going to live in, which is connected by that metro.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there was no change. So if you talk about value addition, there was none. Now that we have so much of overall city improvement happening, standard of livings are increasing, but even there a lot to go.
I want to pick up from this answer of yours and ask it to you in such a manner, in this kind of question. Let's say that someone has a job offer, young guy, and he gets to choose any city in India, okay? And he has to stay there, let's say, for the next 10, 20, 25 years. What's your list of top cities to him? If he comes and asks you that I have this job offer, the only condition is that, and I can choose wherever I want to go in India.
Okay? Can I bring a spin to it?
Boliye na, please.
How about asking this question itself? Why should he buy?
Okay, rent,
Why
whatever.
can't he rent?
Whatever.
Because you spoke about 25 years. Look, another thing that is happening perniciously in this country is we always spoke about urbanization in so many time frames. 50% of people will be living in urban areas, etc. And then there was a fear, "Arey, sab log Mumbai mein aa jayenge, to kya hoga," etc. But mind you, that's not how urbanization is happening. Urbanization means that the next Surat or Mysuru or Nasik or Nagpur or Jaipur are now becoming urban. So these are beyond those 8 obvious cities that we always thought of India about. Let's talk about Americas for that matter. You will talk about 25, 30 top cities that you would know the names of sitting in India. I'll ask the same question to you. Give me 20 cities name in India. Can you? You can't. Why? Because it's such a big problem.
Yeah.
I say that I'm absolutely fine sending my kids to the 24th city of Americas. But I would be, I would dread to send my child to the 10th city of India. That is changing.
Sure.
So in future, where you will have 25 more such cities which are competing with the Bombays and Delhis and Bengalurus of the country, then you will see a different perspective emerging. And in those days, The question will be this: should I buy a house? Because even today, and this is something the millennials and the Gen Z is already asking, why should I buy a house? Because it is tying me down to a certain location. Imagine gig economies or whatever. You are doing your own work. You are a influencer on social media, etc. Why do you want to buy a house in Mumbai? You could be anywhere. You could be living in Alibag or Goa. And that's what is happening. I know many people, my friends, who have moved to Goa. So here, the life connected, or it's like पाँव की बेड़ियाँ हैं आपके. An apartment will tie you down to a location. It will come in as a hindrance for your growth in future. So very awkward, but I'm sure the developers would put a bounty on my head for saying so. Tomorrow you may not even buy a house. Why don't you just rent it and put that money in stocks, which are giving you far better growth than real estate? I'm sorry, I'm not proposing that stock is better,
okay, yeah.
but at least my money I put in stock. So why won't the people also relate to that and put their investments where it is giving them the best return? And the best return is in yourself. Invest your money to see your own growth. So there are a lot of ways which somewhere is raising this question, why should I buy an apartment? Sure. So going back to your question, you're asking me this, which city would it be? I'll try to answer that as well. As I said, there are a lot of these new cities which are coming up, which are good. It's also, you can divide people in two categories, the hill people and the beach people. The beach people can go to Goa or Alibag. The hill people can come to Lonavlas or all the north hills, etc. So there are many choices. But if you will be tied down to a particular company, where your question was, if you find a job somewhere, well, it's essentially Mumbai and a few of these locations in Mumbai where affordability is a question. But today, rest of the city, and we have an affordability index also that we release every now and then, which very clearly shows that it is very simple, very easy, very affordable to buy a house anywhere in the country except for Mumbai. Even Mumbai is not that expensive as it used to be about, say, 10 years back. It has the cost of owning an apartment in Mumbai also has come down, but still a long way to go. So answering your question again, specifically, my favorite city, I would love to go and settle down in Goa.
Okay.
And Goa is also improving.
Yeah.
Well, the Bombay-Goa expressway is also underconnected. And well, a lot of these things are happening today in the country. Connecting the road networks, etc. Mumbai, Delhi.
REITs as an investment option. You already spoke very clearly, very specifically about renting instead of buying, and instead looking at a financial asset like stocks. REITs have come up in the last 4 or 5 years as an investment option. What's your view on that?
Let me first of all clarify. When I spoke about renting and owning, I was talking about an apartment for an end use, which means a residential asset class. REITs in India have only come for offices. Residential REIT is still a pipe dream.
I'm just talking about REITs as an investment option.
Yeah. So REITs as an investment option is still not completely cooked up in the country. And let me also tell you that REITs as an investment option has, destroyed quite a few households in America as we speak. Last 2 years, post-COVID, has been a disaster year. There are many cities and CBDs which are, completely haunted. Crime rate shooting up. You can't step out on many of those footpaths in those cities. The slums, what we always thought Mumbai, we talk about the slumdog millionaire, Dharavis, etc. But in a few of those most established and highly spoken about cities, slums are proliferating. So here, the whole concept of REIT is coming under question. Of course, it has given a lot of them an additional opportunity to invest, varying portfolio options, etc. It is there. Even in India, we have barely 4 or 5 office REITs, which are also not, the next 2 or 3 office REITs are going to take more time. And they were just about waiting in the wings, but the way I look at it, there will be some more delay because they are also afraid of coming in a market which is not very, very rewarding. So REIT right now, I would say, is in a awkward situation.
Okay.
As an investment vehicle also, or overall for those REIT managers also, it's currently a bit of an uncertain situation. Future, I'm sure, will change. Because in India, at least, we are going up the ladder. Even in offices, yet another, if I have to throw in some numbers, as I spoke about a short while back, 850 million square feet of office space that exists in the country. In next 25 years, it will go up to at least 3 billion. So you can imagine what do we have in store. And that is something which will then give enough reason for REITs to come in as a big game. So where the countries I spoke about, Americas, etc., where they have seen this upcycle and enjoyed the fruits of the REITs, etc., we are embarking upon it today.
Sure.
So in a short term, there could be a blip, but after that, it's a bright future for REITs as well.
Gulam, my standard question, my last question to all the guests is, any content recommendation, any book that you're reading or anything that you're watching that you would like to recommend to our listeners?
To me, it's, I may not look like one, but literature is a bit of a passion, and that too a language which could be Greek and Latin to many. Urdu is my language.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
It was a tough task for me to talk for last an hour or so without using Urdu.
You really love it?
Of course, I would have loved to use my language skills of that, but...
Go for it.
Literature, Urdu Shairi, etc. Politically also, it's quite in a awkward position to even talk about it. So
let's not go there. Any favorites?
Well, of course, very easy to say that name, but many of them may not even understand the kalams of Ghalib.
Wow.
He's my all-time favorite. It has taken the world centuries to understand what he said. Poor chap died pauper, and only about 200 odd years later, people realize what he said. So today, while there are volumes written on what he ended up saying, I may have my own perspective to what he has written. So it's a perspective. It's your way to read the same thing, try to understand a different angle out of it.
How is it accessible to people? In the sense that if I know for a fact that Ghalib is Ghalib, and that's it. I haven't read too much. I wouldn't know. You obviously know much more. But if it is accessible, what would you recommend to our listeners to read? Or if you have any favorite couple of lines, please go for it. I would love. I haven't had Urdu in my show for 6 years plus that I'm running this. I would love to hear something. Because
problem.
How can anyone not like or have anything to do with Urdu? Come on here.
Problem is. Unfortunately, Urdu is taken as a language of a religion, which it is never. But since you spoke about it,
please, yeah.
Recently turned up on some old kalam of Ghalib. It's very difficult. I can warn you.
You're here to help us out.
It's difficult.
You're here to help us out.
आपने मुस्तसियुज़्ज़र किया है तो सही, ये भी हज़रत अय्यूब गिला है तो सही. Now, this is written by Ghalib, and when I was reading it to my sister, she was shocked because even she is very good in the language. She could not relate to it. But, the first lines talks about a certain prophet, a Quranic verse. And for Ghalib to say this, who was an absolute atheist, was a shock to many of us.
Wow.
But then he raked up a certain angle. One of prophet had a certain prayer. It is reflecting to that. And saying that even that prophet was complaining to God. Mustasiuzzar is an Arabic word. He's saying when he was making his prayers, he was also complaining.
Wow.
So the more you read, the more you relate to it, the more you understand. Hai ganimat ke ye ummeed guzar jayegi umr. Na mile daad magar roze jaza hai to sahi. This is exactly what Ghalib lived. Wow. For his life, he could not get somebody who could appreciate his sayings or his ghazals, etc. But he's saying Roze Jaza is the day of judgment. So at least in the Roze Jaza, I'll get the review of what I did.
My God.
So the poor chap at that time was writing that whatever I'm writing, people may not relate to it. At least Qayamat ke din to samjhenge.
That level of creativity is something that wow, okay.
So when you're sick and tired of all this real estate, all your first question was, what are the learnings, etc. out of real estate? I would rather lock up all that learning in my workstation, go home and open some literature, if possible, a Ghalib or a Momin or a Akbarabadis, etc. and there is a different world.
My God.
You need generations to continue to read them, and you would still not be awkwardly placed with them enough for you to live by. So language है, literature है, तो real estate को कौन पूछता है?
I don't know what to say. I mean, I think that this episode can take one more direction into a new part.
At your disposal, you call me.
I have to read up on Urdu and Ghalib. I love it, and so one of the most obvious and only accessible ways is Bollywood and movies and here.
Not
and
at all.
I know.
Warn you
You're
to
a
keep away
purist.
from
I know
Bollywood.
you're a purist, but I'm saying that for people.
For your knowledge, Urdu, I don't know how many of your listeners have ever thought about it. Urd means Fauj, army.
Okay.
This language was created as a requirement, as a necessity. Those days when the Mughals came to India and when they were, in their armies, they had fighters of all, Indian fighters of different regions, the Mughals and so on and so forth. So the language was created for the army to communicate with each other. So this language had even, of course, it has started with Arabic, Persian, Hindi, and
Farsi.
those days it was, Farsi is Persian.
Yeah.
So even various dialects of Hindi. You had Brij Bhasha also in Urdu. So Urdu is a mishran of all of those languages, which means a language of army. And mind you, if language of army it had to be rough. So those days when Urdu was formed, it had no literature.
Yeah.
Literature was given to it by a few of these later on shairs, etc., shoras who came up later.
Thanks, Gulam. I mean, for that part especially, because that's a lot of learning. I mean, on a more serious note, it's something that you don't hear very often. So I'm glad that you shared this with our listeners. But folks, there you go. That is a wrap on this episode of Paisa Vaisa. It's the best ending ever to any episode in a very long time. My guest, Gulam Zia, Senior Executive Director, Knight Frank India, Urdu connoisseur also.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Gulam. Really, thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
नहीं, आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया कि आपने मेरे वो कुछ ऐसे पुराने जख्मों को हरा कर दिया जिसकी वजह से उर्दू के वो सारी जो शिकवे शिकायतें गिले शिकवे थे वो निकल आए. तो आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.
अरे क्या बात है. आई थिंक वो मक्खी भी जो आपके आसपास घूम रही है वो भी थोड़ी मे बी जज्बा या जज्बातों में
उर्दू की नजाकत में बह गई.
Folks, there you go. That is a wrap on this episode of Paisa Vaisa.
IVM